episode of Plasma Conduit, Burly Media's Star Trek podcast, and this time we are reviewing Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 6, Trials and Tribble-ations. Oh, Mike, what a pleasure this was to go back and rewatch.
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
We had some good episodes to start with this series.
What a great way to kick this off, and now on our third episode of Plasma Conduit. This was so much fun to revisit. And at a time when I think DS9 had grown its Riker's beard, it had really found its footing. A lot of that I think could be attributed to its shift towards the Dominion War and having Worf join in season 4. I think that there was a real tonal shift in the show. It became more serialized. It became, I think, a lot darker. It's the kind of Star Trek that really pushed the boundaries beyond what Next Gen was doing at the time. Don't forget, this was a very, very busy period in 90s Trek where there was a lot of concurrent shows going on. Voyager, I think Voyager has dropped by this point, or at least very, very soon will.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a very, very saturated time in terms of their output. But what an absolute blast. A brilliant diversion from the intensity of the Dominion War arc. And it kind of just felt like a romp. I know it was to celebrate, I think it was the original series' 30th anniversary. It was definitely a milestone of some kind at the time. And was seen as a sort of a ratings draw to have this be evoking the original series in such a profound and loving way. Just a couple of facts and stats to kick us off. Written by Ronald D. Moore, a prolific Star Trek writer who got his start on Next Generation and was responsible for a lot of the Klingon lore that happened in TNG. We've actually just watched part 1 of the Redemption storyline where Worf's fighting for his honor against the Duras family, and which is brilliant. They did a lot of. He was the one that introduced Picard as the arbiter of succession, and he built out a lot of the lore around the Klingon Empire and Sto-vo-kor and all the Barge of the Dead and all those things we saw then carried through to Voyager. So it made sense that he would be very, the teleplay was by him and Rene Echeverria. It made sense that Ronald D. Moore would be sort of largely pitching the story for this classic episode, and directed by Jonathan West, who has also been pops up in various Star Trek productions over the years in the 90s. My initial takeaway from this is I was just beaming. I was just smiling the whole time watching this.
Same. I haven't watched any Star Trek for a while, and it was one of those where I didn't have to force myself to watch it, but there was stuff I was thinking I'd rather be doing that. But then 5 minutes in, I was just loving it completely. I think it's season 6, is it?
Season 5.
You can season 5. You can kind of tell that the show is, like you were saying earlier, the show is really mature just because of the interplay between the characters. You can tell the cast are really enjoying the episode
They're having so much
as
fun,
well. And I think if you try to do this in season 1 or season 2 even of a show, it can fall a bit flat because they don't have that chemistry. But yeah, some of the interplay between the characters was just O'Brien and Bashir is always a good laugh, but in this one especially, it was just fantastic.
Well, it required so much of that chemistry for it to be natural, because also you saw, there were various instances where they took stock footage or original episode footage of the original series and then transposed.
Yeah.
There was a couple of really funny, very wonky green screens. I think it was during the lineup with O'Brien being dressed down by Kirk. And he's like, "Oh no, sir!" There's such a great sequence there. But there was some of the composite shots look really, really stuck out. But then other times they were really naturally done. There's a great shot of near the end of the episode where Avery Brooks as Sisko speaks to Kirk, and he sort of tries to justify it, saying what would you have done in my position? Would you not have wanted to go and shake the captain's hand or hand him a notepad or something? Those shots look really seamless and really well integrated. There's another corridor scene as well where Jadzia is kind of fangirling over Spock. Sisko assumes it's Kirk being the ladies' man, and then she goes and sort of says, "No, it's all about Leonard Nimoy's Spock." But those shots of them in the background, they looked really well done. And
I think
just a treat to see those characters interact.
I think considering how old the episode is, both episodes that they're having to kind of splice together, but given the technology jump, I think if a modern show tried to do this now with footage that old, it would stick out.
Yes.
I think they did a really good job, given it's so long ago that it was made. I agree, there are a couple of bits that stuck out, but for the most part, I was just enjoying the concept of the episode. It was
And actually,
yeah,
yeah,
such a great
yeah. And
idea.
thinking about it now, like because it was obviously then evoking the '60s show with its polystyrene rocks and Shatner's shirt being ripped. There is actually an element of sort of charm to those effects being a little bit sort of like slapped together and a bit sort of like low budget, because that in itself evokes the original series in many ways. So it's kind of an episode of its time. It's very relative to when that show was originally produced. But also hats off to DS9 for doing it in such a way that it actually felt quite seamless. It felt like it was the characters and the storyline integrated really well with obviously various existing scenes. They had to craft a story that made sense, and it was always going to involve time travel. But I do think they did a nice job justifying how these characters, or rather why these characters would end up going back and meet the original series cast.
Yeah, it was quite a good story compared to when you normally have like cameo. Well, normally it's obviously the other way generally, that you have the cameos from previous Star Trek shows coming forward into the present day shows, which I've very few of those have I ever enjoyed as much as I enjoyed this this episode. Like you say, it just felt like a normal episode of DS9. Obviously the tone is a lot lighter than a lot of what you have in season 5, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, they've just invented this crazy reason to have the Enterprise come along. It was
Exactly.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, that actually, I think you referenced the idea, when they have had the other way round, where they've had characters guest in. My absolute all-time #1 episode is Relics, which is the episode where James Doohan comes back as Scotty, season 6 of TNG.
Oh, that's so good.
It's just, that is a way to actually add something to our understanding of a character, have them revisit their legacy and have it be about usefulness and about, their worth in a time where their knowledge is outdated and can they still fit in. They didn't just glorify the original series in that episode. They made it actually feel like a tangible storyline that mattered. It arguably gave Scotty more character development than he'd ever had in the show or films. And that's where you use a legacy character right, and there's an opportunity being leveraged there. This definitely was just kind of lent more towards, let's just see Worf talking about tribbles and the Great Tribble War.
Yeah.
I loved Odo giving him shit for that. It was fun to see Odo relax a little bit and loosen up as well, which was really fun. That worked, I think, to its advantage there, because they lent into the humour, and they lent into something that allowed these characters to have a little bit of a knowing wink, And speaking of winks, I had to throw in, Riker's wink. One of the most obvious ones is obviously Jadzia's fixation with both McCoy, because she talks about the hands of a surgeon, doesn't she? Which is really funny. Some really and again exploring sort of the fact that she probably knew. I think she mentioned, didn't she? She knew one of her previous hosts knew Dr. McCoy when he was hosting the Dax symbiote, which is a really cool, nice little legacy tie in there. But the most egregious Riker's wink, one of our recurring segments where we track characters flirting with each other. One of the most egregious Riker's winks was Bashir and that nurse and that ensign, before he then realised it was that O'Brien and him unpacked in the Turbolift the grandfather paradox. And
possibly,
I thought that was so funny and so totally in keeping with sort of Bashir's awkward womanizing that he has at this phase in his life, still lusting after Jadzia. He matures a lot, particularly in the 6th and 7th season, where we start getting Section 31 and all of that stuff involved. At this point, he's still that very immature character, and it's fun to see him play with that. It's a nice shade for him. For sure.
I loved that scene. And another one I really liked was where Bashir was scanning, and then there was like another engineer came along, and they had to pretend that O'Brien was O'Brien was trying to explain to the other engineer how to fix whatever the thing was that he claimed he was there to do, and then he took the power out from the deck, and then Bashir was inventing he's under a lot of stress.
He's under a lot of stress. His workload, I had to take him slowly to sickbay, which was great. So we also, just tracking again, this is our recurring segments, we had interference, which is where how often does interference cause an issue. There was a huge amount of interference when they were first hit by the anomaly and tried to make their way there, and then that was pretty much it. I don't know could we call the amount of tribbles when they were searching for the bomb, could we call that, with their scanner, they had to manually scan all the tribbles?
That was so good with the old footage of the
of
the
Kirk.
tribbles falling on Kirk, and then them just above, basically.
They
just did a good job of the kind of warmth of the old footage and the new
Yeah.
footage, and it not being looking too, a difference in massive difference in quality. It was so good when it's flicking like literally between two
Shot to shot, isn't it? Yeah, and it looked
shot like filmed
seamless.
such a long way apart. Yeah.
There was also in that scene where they're in the cargo container and they're scanning the tribbles, where you can hear the audio from the original series episode, but they've muffled it and they've changed they've given it like an echo to create that sense of distance, so you can hear it happening. Then they just cut back to the conversation midway through, just a seamless cut. It just looked like it was all part of the same episode. Really, really well done. I don't remember any nods. We have our nod tracker. TNG and DS9 and Voyager characters used to love doing a sort of actors nod to each other. I don't remember a nod in this episode. Any sort of like... Oh, maybe the sort of Mulder and Scully, the temporal investigations. I wish we'd seen more of those, actually, in DS9. It's the only time they appear.
Yeah.
Really sort of dead serious and played it absolutely straight. I feel like they may have had a little kind of knowing nod. I might be just putting that... I might be misremembering that, but...
Yeah, I feel like as well. There may have been something with one of like O'Brien or Bashir, like having some sort of interaction with the Enterprise crew that they probably weren't supposed to do.
Yes,
with the fight scene, especially where they get roped into.
Absolutely
fighting.
Love that, having Chekhov in the mix in there, and it was just it was so much fun. There was a couple of really nice little moments in this which really worked, which was the brief confusion over the color swap, how the red was security and engineering, not yellow, which is it flipped from what it is, in the DS9 TNG era. So that was really, really fun to see that. And
this guy looks good in the old uniforms,
in the gold, right? In the he looks sharp, doesn't he? And Jadzia, obviously, I loved her with her hair up as well, like in that sort of the beehive and the
but Bashir looked very authentic. O'Brien looks a bit of a mess. Because I think they've got slightly different hair as well to make them fit in, and O'Brien's just
looks odd, especially in the fight scene too. That really became apparent in that for sure. Great to see Worf with his the hat, the pull down hat,
military
on to
uniform,
to hide his ridges, and again just Odo having so much fun with him in this. He was just having a blast in this episode. It was great. I
like the bit where they're in the turbo lift for the first time and they don't know how to operate it. That was
there were so many things like that with like the communications panel and the turbo lift handles and all of those things. There was a few touchstones where they didn't know how stuff worked. Really fun to see Cisco flip open a classic communicator, and Jadzia being impressed by the tricorder, sort of having that sort of loving the look of it, which actually weirdly reminded me of Boimler in the Strange New Worlds Lower Decks crossover, where he was fascinated by the T-88 tricorders that Mbenga has. It was a nice callback to that.
That came across really nicely, especially the reverence for Kirk, like he's literally a hero of everyone in Starfleet. On the tricorder thing, I think they're in the lift again, and they pointed out that said to Bashir, "Your flaps open." And it was like the bottom of his.
It's great. Just such casual dialogue, and Cisco trying to keep Jadzia on track, only for him to then indulge himself and thank Kirk for his brief time. And it really, like, I know that scene that scene that they took, that where he goes, Lieutenant. Whole questioning bit is like a random female ensign is talking to him in the actual original series episode, but it looks perfect in this. Like, especially his little reaction. You'd think they were in the scene together.
So much effort must have gone into this episode so obviously someone would have to watched the whole. A few people would have watched the whole of the original series again in preparation for this to find suitable footage to splice in and stuff. Obviously the actual production time to do it and have it look convincing would have been really expensive, I would have thought.
Too, as well. Like, they built so many, like, they rebuilt the mess hall, the corridors, you had the turbo lift, and a section of the bridge was recreated as well. I know that I saw some behind the scenes stuff on this, that there was like a fan project. I know that they've had a few of those over the years that have recreated a lot of the sets. I think they did recover some of the set pieces from a fan project, because they used the same again in season 6 of TNG, where they had Scotty on the bridge on the holodeck of the original. And again, they didn't build the whole thing, but they shot like a segment of it that they could then capture certain angles, and that was so like authentic and really well matched, which was great. There was some really fun get it done as one of our recurring segments where someone is asked to do something quicker than readily agrees. Just the entire bomb search for the Tribble, just the time of the ticking clock of that was really great pressure. I don't feel like there was any Reg Barclays, any baffling crew decisions in this one. There wasn't anything too egregious. I don't think.
So the only one that was kind of tangentially related to that was when they first get hit in the Defiant. Cisco's just so calm, it's unreal, because they don't know what it is. Like, they could literally have just been destroyed by whatever it is, and Cisco's just like giving his orders or whatever, and he's just sitting back. I know that is just Cisco's way, but
totally,
it's just like,
he could have been in the Gamma Quadrant or something. Like, he could have been stuck out there. No, absolutely. I thought they had the final sort of segment. We were talking about the alien makeup, the prosthetics. I love those old-fashioned Klingon looks where they just stick them in a beard and scruffle up their hair a little bit. But they gave them like the accentuated sort of the eye makeup and the eye. They had a lot of extras made up because of the fight sequence. They had a lot of extras made up to look like classic original series Klingons. And Worf briefly hints at it, doesn't he? That the whole
that was really nice,
which was nice because that then pays off like a decade later in Enterprise, where they have a whole 2-part arc around why some Klingons look different, and it was because they were experimenting with augment DNA. So that's a lovely... They kind of addressed that problem in Enterprise, but it was always sort of left as a thread hanging. And Worf's had a couple of moments like that, like in the 3rd season of Picard, where they say, well, we obviously can't use the Enterprise E. It cuts to Worf, and he just says, well, that wasn't my fault. There's so many. He's always used as sort of like the story thread left dangling, and I think that's a nice motif for him that definitely was established in this episode too. I had an absolute blast with this, and this was so nostalgic in the right way. It was reverential and it was loving, and it wasn't beholden to it. It still told a new story, and we got to see our DS9 characters having some fun. So that in itself is enough, isn't it? We got to see that, which was great. As we wrap up our episode of Plasma Conduit, we always pick our next episode. So whenever we shoot an episode of Plasma Conduit, we choose at random our next episode. I'm going to start my random tracker. Here we go. Okay, one of Kate Mulgrew's favourites. We're going to Voyager. Season 5, Episode 10, Counterpoint. This is the episode where the Devore are searching Voyager for telepaths, and they have to smuggle them out of their space. And it's a really great sort of... It gives Janeway a romantic interest, and it's a really sort of cat and mouse game throughout the whole episode. Should be really interesting for us to check that out and go back to. So that'll be our next episode of Plasma Conduit. You can follow us at Burlybird Media on all of the things: Threads, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Podbean, and Spotify, as well as our Discord. So please jump in there. Mike, where can people find you?
You can find me at theexportsguide.com and at theexportsguide on Threads and Blue Sky.
Very rare that you mess up that outro, and I'm normally the one responsible for that. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.